Good morning on Russia. Drones attacked a chemical plant.
It's really smoking over there, like a lot. In
Occupied Donetsk, there's another blackout. Putin threatens to seize Donbas and other Ukrainian territories by any means.
Either we will liberate these territories by military means, or Ukrainian troops will leave these territories and stop fighting there.
The Ukrainian armed forces continue to hold the northern part of Pokrovsk. Resources are stretched to the limit. Rubio assessed the capabilities of the Russian army.
If you look at the map from March-April, after the invasion, and compare it to the map now, the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians far back.
The West is strengthening Ukraine. There will be even more weapons.
Norway is providing $500 million and Germany $200 million and another $25 million to the NATO fund.
A bitter truth. A Russian general admitted the Kremlin's fatal mistake in Ukraine.
As always, the formidable enemy was severely underestimated, and their own military forces were greatly overestimated.
We don't just talk about all this in the episode. Main news on the YouTube channel Ukraine Today. I'm Alexei Lickman. Thank you for watching us. And please don't forget to like if you appreciate our team's work. So friends, New Zealand and Australia will finance the purchase of weapons, including from the United States of America, for Ukraine. What's the news here? This is the first time that countries not part of the NATO bloc are joining the project. How generous will our partners be, and how much will this actually help our soldiers on the battlefield? That's what we're talking about today, among other things. Ahead, we have a report, followed by an exclusive discussion.
NATO has confirmed its readiness to increase assistance to Kyiv. If we don't do this now, it will cost us much more in the future. Partners will supply Ukraine with weapons under the Pearl program, estimated at around $1 billion.
About $1 billion in additional support has been confirmed by our allies to support our army through the PURL program. 5 countries have additionally announced this. But for me, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, a country at war, it was truly important to feel this unity and determination right now.
In addition to the commitment of allied countries to allocate funding, one of the important elements of the meeting was the discussion of sanctions and the need to synchronize sanction packages.
At the moment we are on track, but we need about 4 billion by this time of year. Starting from August, that's 1 billion per month. And right now we have 4 billion, so there is still work to be done. In December, I am cautiously optimistic that we will also cover December.
At the beginning of August, the US and NATO launched a new mechanism to support Ukraine through the Priorities Ukraine Requirements Initiative, abbreviated as PURL. NATO countries, with the exception of the United States, make voluntary financial contributions for the supply of American weapons and technology to Ukraine.
Pearl is an initiative under which European countries purchase American weapons and transfer them to Ukraine through NATO in order to put an end to this war. If there is one thing we learned during President Trump's term, it is the active use of force to achieve peace. Peace is achieved through strength, not through harsh statements or threatening gestures. It is achieved through strength when you have real capabilities that are respected by your adversaries.
KORL allows for the coordination of contributions, speeds up procurement, and delivers to the front lines more quickly those items that cannot be replaced by European equivalents. The Netherlands were the first to join the initiative in the fall, allocating 500 million euros for the purchase of Patriot systems and other air defense equipment. Denmark, Norway, and Sweden funded ammunition for HIMARS and other critical supplies. Germany and Canada joined them. Belgium, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Iceland, Luxembourg announced their readiness to join the 5th funding package. Australia and New Zealand are expanding their support. The countries will provide military aid packages worth $63 million and $8.7 million.
Now even New Zealand and Australia, which are not members of NATO but are close partners of the alliance through the Indo-Pacific region, have also now made commitments. This is truly excellent news. And this gives us a stable flow of weapons to Ukraine from the necessary US stockpiles.
While allies are joining in supporting Ukraine, Italy has decided to withdraw from the Pearl program.
It would be premature to participate in the NATO program for purchasing American weapons for Ukraine in light of the ongoing peace negotiations. If we reach an agreement and the fighting stops, weapons will no longer be needed. Instead, other things will be needed, such as security guarantees.
This statement was the first open sign of a change in course by Giorgia Meloni's government. Hungary is also against participating in arms purchases. At the same time, the Netherlands will provide 500 million euros, Norway 250, and Canada 200. Poland is allocating $100 million for Patriot missiles.
The fate of Europe is at stake. We all want this war to end, and we welcome peace efforts. But it is extremely important that the result is a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Germany has not stayed on the sidelines either.
Germany has not stayed on the sidelines either. All this money will be spent on arms for Ukraine.
The federal government is very proud that together with our friends in Poland and Norway, we are able to form another large package that is necessary to support Ukraine. $500 million is a significant amount. Germany is providing 200 million of that.
Let us recall that the first two military aid packages to Ukraine under the Pearl Initiative included missiles for the Patriot air defense system and the HIMARS multiple launch rocket system, which helped our defenders on the battlefield and protected Ukrainian cities from Russian missiles. Ukraine has requested an additional 1 billion euros for the winter period to compensate for the reduction in supplies from the United States in previous months. Pearl remains one of the key mechanisms for assisting Ukraine, but its future directly depends on the political decisions of the Allies and the progress of ceasefire negotiations.
Next, we speak with Pavlo Lakichuk. We are joined by the head of security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Pavlo, hello. I am very glad to welcome you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let's start as usual. Thank you very much. Thank you for finding the time. As usual, let's start with the hottest spots. That's the east of Ukraine, just like in previous months and weeks. There is information that the Russians have advanced into Volchansk and are trying to gain a foothold among the ruins. This was stated by Viktor Trehubov, the head of communications for the Joint Forces Group. What is the situation there as of today? Because from the Russian Federation side, we've lost count of how many times we've heard about the capture of Volchansk, then its recapture, and then capture again, and in Kupiansk and so on. What is the current situation in this direction as of today?
Well, the primary epicenter of the intense fighting still remains firmly in the southeastern part of the country, specifically within the Donetsk region. This includes key areas such as Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, Kostiantinivka, Druskivka, and the strategically important Siversky salient. The enemy continues to intensify efforts in other areas as well. That is, no less important indeed is the current situation in the southern and southeastern regions, where circumstances are considerably more serious and challenging. However, we must also consider the northern areas. Specifically, this refers to Kupiansk, which is located within the Kharkiv region. The Russians have a dual objective: to concentrate all possible forces and reserves on the main axis of attack and to stretch the Ukrainian defense as much as possible along the front. Knowing full well about our current critical lack of available reserves, their primary strategic goal is to actively prevent us from effectively concentrating these vital forces to successfully repel their main anticipated attacks. This crucial strategic insight fully explains precisely what is currently happening now, both in the fiercely contested Volchansk direction and indeed in the broader Kharkiv direction. Overall, it is important to note that Volchansk has not yet been taken.
We're listening.
Volchansk has not been taken. Fighting urban combat continues. In previous months, our group of forces localized those Russian units that were in the city, in the area of the aggregate plant. Now the Russians have concentrated additional forces in this direction, which are also trying to infiltrate the city. This infiltration tactic, they say, is a new tactic. There is nothing new about this tactic. It's the same old tactic of pushing through. Remember, a year or two ago, we said they were pushing through our defenses. Now they're infiltrating. Because pushing through meant that when there was at least some kind of single echelon defensive line, they would break through it. You can't infiltrate it, but when the defensive line becomes thin enough, they just penetrate right through it. When organized groups of enemy soldiers go up against our defending groups, this critical situation is now commonly called infiltration, the direct result of insufficient forces in defense, leading to breaches. We are then forced to respond with much greater losses to eliminate them. We act reactively in emergency mode. That's the problem right now, and not just in the Volchansk direction, but also in Gulyapol and in the south. It's the same situation. In general, this is exactly the situation in the main directions of attack.
Pavel, the enemy is now launching an information psychological operation, and unfortunately it's spreading rapidly, claiming that they're about to be ready for a new offensive towards Zaporizhzhia, Chernihiv and Kharkiv. Do you think the enemy actually has the strength for this?
No. No, right now all their forces are concentrated in Donbass. If the autumn campaign goes the same way, the autumn-winter one, if it unfolds in the same manner as the failed, let's be honest. Russian army's summer campaign, the spring-summer campaign, then these reserves will be worn down somewhere near Pokrovsk. They're already being depleted there, the second echelons. North of Pokrovsk, they're already throwing troops into battle near Kostyantinivka and Druzhkivka. In order to achieve success in other directions, they need to deal with the Donbass stronghold. Nevertheless, where it's thin, that's where it breaks. The Gulyapol direction, where we were concentrating, gathering forces, expecting a strike from the south, the enemy was advancing from the east towards Kharkov, the Novopavlivka direction. Now it has become more Polish, and unfortunately, not even because of the ratio of our forces to the enemy's. Here, the key factor is that the enemy is entering our rear and flanks, which is a strategic result. We are starting to count the dozens of kilometers that have been lost over the past month. More were lost in November than in October, because the enemy has pushed through in the Gulyapol direction. There is no longer a Novopavlivka direction. And from this point of view, there is a threat to Zaporizhzhia. Well, just look at how far the enemy has advanced in half a year from Kharkov to Gulyapol and how far it is from Gulyapol to Zaporizhzhia. Even if they keep advancing at this pace, if they are able to, it will still take them a very long time to reach Zaporizhzhia, to put it mildly. I think the mistakes made at Kharkov and Novopavlivka will be taken into account, and the enemy will be stopped near Gulyapol. There's also the fortified area at Orikhiv. In general, everything is complicated, but this suggests that the enemy has enough forces to reach Zaporizhzhia, and even more so, to begin an assault.
Given the pace of the advance you're talking about, which has started to be paid for even more generously in blood, after all, we remember that in recent months, the percentage of irrecoverable losses in the Russian Federation has already reached 65 or even 70%. That's the number of KIAs out of the total losses. And now Putin is demanding to be given, in effect, the remaining part of the unoccupied Donetsk region as a gift. At this rate of advance with such losses, what do you think? Theoretically, how much time might he need to seize these lands?
If Vitkov and Trump are telling us to give Putin the Donetsk region, that means they want Putin to be satisfied with just the Donetsk region. I haven't literally heard Putin explicitly say Donetsk region. What I distinctly heard was Ukrainian army.
He's already started dreaming about Novorossiya again.
We'll capture them, right? Then he remembers Novorossiya again. Then he recalls his thesis from 2 years ago, before Ukraine's counteroffensive near Kursk, about a security belt in the north of Chernihiv. That's Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy regions. What else should we give him so that he'll calm down? No. If we surrender a city to them, the next one will say, we could have given up the next one too. Let's keep going. We need to decide what we're willing to give up without a fight.
Nothing.
Kyiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, Kharkiv. What is less valuable to us? Well, come on, let's decide. Well, there you have it, really. The whole question is the answer.
Don't you find it strange that Putin has started making threats so often? And all of this seems like, to put it bluntly, the posturing of a street thug. After all, if everything were going well for the Russian Federation's army and its military political leadership, and if all his plans were realistic, it would be better to keep quiet about them and show everything on the battlefield rather than strutting around and making threats. At the same time, threatening Ukraine, Europe, and practically half the world by brandishing their nuclear warheads.
Just look, remember a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when Putin or Peskov were asked about the situation at the front. At best, there was this signature phrase, everything is going according to plan. The special military operation is going according to plan. Leave us alone. These are all minor questions for the Ministry of Defense. They would explain everything to you in detail over there. Now, Putin is trying to... He regularly appears in military uniform. He talks about the successes of the Russian army, getting confused about the names. There are some battles going on for Komsomolsk. They're surrounding Staroyarsko. Even many Russians, those who possess a little bit of geographical knowledge, specifically Soviet geography, the extensive geography of the former Soviet Union, obviously and clearly understand that their current president is indeed talking about cities that simply do not exist in reality. Why is Putin so focused on military actions? If before he used to say that we have no war, that we still have plenty of our own things here. He accuses President Zelensky of refusing to hold elections under martial law, saying, wait a minute, we also have a war and we held elections during the war just fine. I was re-elected as always. In other words, the word war comes up again and again. Russians have a law there for discrediting. Of course, it doesn't apply to Putin. And the fact that Putin started talking about war, about Russia waging a war, not directly, but with caveats. Peskov says, we are waging a war, but our war is humane. But if it's with Europe, then it'll be a disaster. So the military rhetoric is obviously due to the fact that in Russia, people are already reacting when oil refineries are burning, when depots are hit, when they talk about munitions depots.
When strikes hit Russian territory itself.
What is truly happening? Even now, Putin himself is compelled to explain the situation.
Let's talk about the strike on the Vicky. Well, that's clear. They need to normalize the war because in reality it has already come back like a boomerang. Now that the war has reached Russian territory, the tyrant needs new ideological talking points. And how would you assess the current level of the war returning to Russian territory? Because, we've kind of gotten used to it. We've gotten so used to it that we barely pay attention anymore. It seems to us that not much is burning or blazing in Russia, even though news of it comes almost every morning. That every night, new waves of friendly drones reach one, then another, then a third oil refinery, and hit some other factories as well. How much has Ukraine managed to scale up these attacks in recent months? These strikes, I mean?
Well, naturally, when there are occasional pinpoint strikes, we hit one target here, another there, sometimes over there.
The overall picture starts to come together.
We hit there, we hit here, our guys did a great job. But when this turns into a system, that's a whole different level, a completely different level. Not just in perception, but in reality as well. Reality. There isn't just a single solitary map anymore. Many dedicated OSINT analysts, numerous skilled experts are diligently making these comprehensive maps, and so are we, with our own contributions. In Strategy 21, there's a detailed map where we meticulously mark the crucial oil refineries and vital terminals that have been hit by the enemy with distinctive flags indicating their status. But for other oil and gas facilities, flags aren't enough anymore. We have to add +1, +2, +3 with a marker on top. In other words, half the facilities have been hit. Now, repeat strikes have started. This is pretty much what we talked about with you, I think, about 6 months ago regarding systematic action. A single powerful strike can potentially take out even a significant major plant, which then consequently goes offline for an extended period, perhaps a week or even a month. And that inevitably means substantial financial losses for the budget. But what truly is the fundamental essence of the entire system? The idea is that the petrodollars coming from these Russian oil and gas enterprises for the war not only stop flowing into the Russian budget, but on the contrary, these enterprises start draining the budget instead. That's why it's systematic. The strikes on these enterprises are carried out in such a way that they don't just go offline temporarily. Like they get hit, and then for a week, an emergency situation lasts for half a year or 6 months or 3 months. They work on restoring it. If it takes them 3 months to restore it, then in 4 months, there should be another strike. so that while they're still repairing it, instead of spending Russian budget money on tanks, shells, and missiles, they have to divert it to rebuilding that plant. Then it gets hit again, and once more the money is taken away and redirected here. The more such targets there are, the less perhaps Putin can fund his army, not just in absolute terms, but relatively as well.
And you can keep extending that economic chain. The less is sold during the repair period. Contracts are lost, penalties have to be paid. Insurance for foreign trading companies, it's like an avalanche there, purely economic. It keeps rolling on, and we need to be fully aware of that. All right, but there have also been more frequent strikes on the temporarily occupied Crimea, and we've been hitting more and more accurately, wouldn't you agree? Just in the past 2 weeks, the special unit of the main intelligence directorate, Ghosts, has carried out 8 precise strikes on key Russian targets in the occupied Crimea. According to their report, bombers, radars, and Russian logistics have come under attack. Can we say that we've already managed to deplete Russian air defenses in Crimea given so many precise hits? Yes, and Russia has reached the point where it can no longer compensate for these losses?
I wouldn't say that. They try to restore their assets, which takes them about 7 to 10 days on average. That's how long it takes them, and take note of this. The destruction of surveillance assets, that is, the coastal surveillance and air defense systems, occurs with every strike. In other words, the strikes are comprehensive in nature. But I would like to draw attention to one very small detail. Yesterday or the day before in Akach, which is near Sevastopol, our drone operators destroyed a MiG-29 fighter jet. Kacha is a naval aviation airfield for ship-based aviation. It's for shipborne helicopters and a mixed air regiment with B-12S and A-26S. Fighter jets have never been based there. And now suddenly there's a MiG-29. What does that tell us? It means that the Russians are finally starting to disperse their fighter aircraft and in general, their combat aviation. Combat aviation from the main base airfields, we all knew. They arrive via Novoferdorovka and they arrive via the naval aviation pier. They are flying towards Belbek, which is an airfield of enemy fighter aircraft. Where are these concentration points? The Russians realized that that was it. Novoferdorovka, Gvardeyskaya, Belbek, that's for sure. If the Ukrainians have nowhere else to strike, they'll strike here and they'll definitely hit. And that's why, just like with the Black Sea Fleet, which was forced after a series of successful strikes by our drones on the Sevastopol naval base, on Donuzlav, on Feodosia, to disperse across the entire Black Sea from Tuapse to Novorossiysk. And they're even starting to talk about Chamkira now. The same goes for aviation. In the end, they are forced to use dispersed basing. This shows that their losses are very significant. Moreover, it indicates that they are expecting further Ukrainian attacks and an escalation of them.
And they will get what they're waiting for, we can promise that. Overall, of course, this demonstrates excellent progress. From Kyiv in 3 days to evacuate the fleet, save the aviation, and it will only get worse for them from here. We believe in this. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine. A huge thank you to them for this. Pavel, thank you as well for your work, for joining us regularly, and for sharing your analysis. To our viewers, let me remind you that today my questions were answered by Pavlo Lakichuk, Head of Security Programs at the Center for Global Studies, Strategy 21. Until next time.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.